Hey creeps, it's Cameron again and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. On this episode of Library Macabre, I have a huge 60+ book haul. Okay, so this is going to be my January book haul, all the books that I got in January. This month I was mostly sent a lot of books from publishers and authors, but I still ended up buying a ton of books, as you'll see, and I honestly don't know how that happened. I've been trying to be good, but I guess I'm a creature of habit or something. Okay, speaking of review books, here are all of my review books. I'm going to go through these first. Alright, so the first book I received for review is from Crystal Lake Publishing. This is called Welcome to the Show. It is an anthology that is edited by Matt Hayward and Doug Morano. It is an anthology with stories all taking place in the same music venue where a bunch of shady and very spooky things happen. So very excited to get to this. I'll be reading it very, very soon. And the next book I got for review is from Grindhouse Press, and that is Kinfolk. This is by Matt Kurtz. It's a story about two criminal brothers who are running from the cops and they get stranded in this hunting ground that is patrolled by a family looking for fresh meat to feed their hunger for flesh. So it's a cannibalistic family story. Just give it to me. This is a middle grade kind of spooky fantasy book that I requested from Penguin, and that is Monstrous Devices by Damien Love. The synopsis here says, on a winter's day in a British town, 12-year-old Alex receives a package in the mail, an old tin robot from his grandfather. This one is special, says the enclosed note. And when strange events start occurring around him, Alex suspects that this small toy is more than special. It might be deadly. All the way from Scotland, we have The Forgotten Island. This is by David Sodergren, who contacted me, asked me if I wanted to review this, and I felt kind of bad because he does live in Scotland and I live here in the US. It costs a lot to ship books all the way from there. I didn't want him to pay that much. I offered to just, I would just buy the book on Amazon and review it for him either way, because it's only $10 on Amazon. It doesn't cost that much. But he insisted on sending me one, and he sent me a nice signed copy here, which is signed from him and his pug, Boris. So I was really happy that he insisted on sending me this copy. It was really, really sweet of him. So thank you, David. Here we have Devil's Hill, a terrifying anthology of Halloween horror by Stephen Reyes. I actually just got this one for Christmas, which is called the Halloween Special. This book binds up this one and his previous book, which I think was just called Welcome to Devil's Hill or something. I can't remember for sure. I might be wrong about that. But he offered to send me this for review. He also signed it for me, which is really nice. Fat Camp by James Sabata. It is a slasher that takes place in a fat camp. Thank you, James, for sending me this. Cannot wait to read it. Another book I was offered for review is Horn by A.D.T. McClellan. And this is kind of a cross between a comedy, fantasy, and horror, kind of all mixed up into one. It's about a town called Horn where a bunch of weird, crazy things happen. Okay, so Gray Matter Press is a horror, sci-fi, fantasy publisher that I have been wanting to get into for a while. I have been looking at their catalog and they have some really, really cool books. So when they contacted me and asked me if I was interested in reviewing any of their books, I was like, yes, please. So they sent me a link to their catalog and said to, name a few titles, and I didn't want to be too greedy or anything, so I just picked out two. I said I wanted to review The Isle, which is by John C. Foster. I have a thing about covers that have hands just like bursting through stuff. Hands coming out of water, hands bursting through a grave, or I don't know. There's just something about a good spooky hand. But I saw the cover for this with the hand coming out of the water holding the lobster, and then also there's a lighthouse in the background, and the water definitely gives me some New England vibes, and the book does take place in New England. So it just has a lot of selling points for me. So I requested this. Cannot wait to read this one. Alright, so the next book that I requested from Gray Matter Press is The Bell Witch by John F.D. Taft. I've always had this kind of weird fascination and obsession with the Bell Witch. I don't know what it is exactly. I think it goes back to when I was a kid, when I saw a documentary about her, and then I saw that Sissy Spacek movie called American Haunting, which was kind of a fictional take on the Bell Witch legend. Yeah, ever since then I've just been like really fascinated. I've watched all these documentaries and read all these books about her. I've made her a character in one of the books that I'm writing. So I'll read anything really that has to do with the Bell Witch. So when I saw this, I had to have it. And then when I put in my request to Gray Matter Press, they came back and asked me if I would be curious in reviewing anything else by John F. D. Taft. And I was like, yeah, of course, send anything you want. So they sent me a copy of The End and All Beginnings. And this is a anthology of novellas, and I've heard great things. All the reviews I've seen have been really positive. So I'm excited to read that one. And not only did they send me that one, but they also sent me 2 other books that I completely was not expecting at all. This one is called Peel Back the Skin, which is another anthology. It is edited by Anthony Rivera and Sharon Lawson, and this looks gnarly. I mean, look at that cover. And then they sent me a book called Before, which is by Paul Kane. Never heard of this one before, but it looks really sweet. And there's a nice quote by Clive Barker on the cover. He says, Paul Kane is a first-rate storyteller. And this looks like a really interesting story. It's like, it says it's part horror story, part thrilling road trip adventure, part historical drama. And I think it intertwines a bunch of different timelines, which I think is really interesting when authors do that. So thank you, Gray Matter Press. You guys are awesome. I was not expecting a big, heavy box of books coming to me from you guys. So thank you. All right, so those were the review books. And here I have some good old mass market horror paperbacks. Good old paperbacks from hell, if you will. Starting off with a couple of YA point horror titles, we have Night Terrors, which is by Jim Murphy. I had never seen this book before, ever, in my whole life. I didn't know it existed, which is really rare for me, especially when it comes to point horror. I usually feel like I know all of the point horror books that are out there, but apparently not. So that is Night Terrors by Jim Murphy. And then we have the 29th and final book in the Nightmare Hall series by Diane Ho. This is called The Voice in the Mirror. I have nearly all of the books in this series, minus like 3 or 4. So I was able to find the final book. Finally, it's in great shape. No spine creases or anything. And here we have Snow, which is by Ronald Malfi. I have heard a ton of great things about this guy's books, especially on Instagram and the Bookstagram community. People just rave about his writing. So this might be a good place to start, maybe. I don't know. If you've read this one, let me know how it is. Here we have Alfred Hitchcock's Coffin Corner. And whenever I can find these little Alfred Hitchcock paperback books, I always pick them up. The cover on this next book is a beautiful thing to look at. It is 50 Great Horror Stories. This is edited by John Canning. This is the first printing of the paperback in perfect condition. There's like not a flaw on this whole book. I love a good horror anthology, but I gotta say I bought this mostly for the cover. It's just so beautiful. This is one that's really rare. It is called Out for Blood. This is published in 1991. It's a first printing. It's from Avon Press, and it's in beautiful condition. Oktoberfest by Frank De Felitta, who is the guy who wrote Audrey Rose. The bloody hatchet on the cover is what made me want to buy this book. It's not in the best shape. There's like a tear on the cover. Spine's all creased and faded. But still, it's a good reading copy, and I really, really want to read this book. Here's another cool cover. This is called A Different Darkness, which is by Jean DeWeese. I have a couple of his books, but this one is just amazing. It's got kind of a Lovecrafty look to it. Again, great shape. This was published by Playboy Press in 1982. It's the first printing. Here's The Judas Seed, which is by Anthony Gentile, another one that's in perfect condition. This one is from July 1982. This next one I got at the Dollar Book Swap as well. I can't believe I found this book for $1. I was stunned to find it there. This is called Son of the Endless Night, and this is by John Ferris. Look at that die-cut cover. Look at the inlay there. That is amazing. I absolutely love that artwork. I think it was featured in Paperbacks from Hell. Here we have The Coven, which is by Jay Hampton. This is published by Pinnacle. It's an early Pinnacle book. This was from 1978, first printing. I love the gothic look of that cover and the fox. I love foxes. Published by Tor in 1981, we have Vampire. Here we have Cahiche, which is by Nathan Butler. And this one was from Fawcett in 1983. Here we have By Blood Alone, which is just kind of your standard Interview with the Vampire kind of rip-off book from the late 70s. I really like that cover. This is a popular one. We have Carrion Comfort by Dan Simmons. This is a first printing of the paperback. I would still like to get a hardcover at some point. So those are all of the vintage horror paperbacks. But I also got this book here. It is called The Collected Pulp Horror. This started out as a fanzine, and I think it's still going. But the author recently came back to the first 3 issues and just kind of updated them and published them all together in a nice big book. And I'm hoping he does this for the rest of the issues because this is an awesome book. This is only $5.99 on Amazon. Highly recommend you go order this because you get so much for the price. I also have a few horror magazines here to show you. Of course, I have Fangoria issue number 2. I am in love with the new Fangoria. I think they're doing a great job. If you want to see me unbox this and look through it, I do have a video of me unboxing this on my Patreon page. If you go to the Ultimate Creep tier, you'll be able to see a video of me getting into this and being very, very excited and nerdy. I also have the new issue of Horror Hound. This is issue number 74. Horror Hound's just a really fun magazine. Again, a lot like Fangoria. I just love the work that they do. And this one is amazing in that it has an entire retrospective on McFarlane's Movie Maniacs, which is so cool. They have all of the different figures shown, and it's like a 10-page spread about McFarlane Movie Maniacs. It's incredible. And here we have the latest issue of Rue Morgue. And considering I talk about horror a lot, I don't usually give any kind of like trigger warnings or warn you about, you know, gory content or anything. But the cover for this is actually quite kind of gory. So if you're disturbed by that kind of thing, you might want to look away. But if you're like me, this doesn't bother you at all. So here we have the latest issue of Rue Morgue. It's got an image from the brand new Rabid film, which Rabid was a Cronenberg movie from the 70s. But Rue Morgue is one of my favorite magazines. They just are so good. And they do a lot of really academic kind of takes on horror films, which is nice. It's just really refreshing, so I really like this one. And lastly, for the magazines, we have the latest issue of Scream magazine, which I love Scream magazine. They do such amazing work. Each one of their issues is 100 pages, full color. They talk a lot about older films. Like you can see they're talking about Firestarter there. There's Martin, which is by George Romero. They just feature all kinds of like B movies and do full write-ups on them. I just really respect and I appreciate what they do. So check them out, please. And they also have a really good book review section as well. I lied. Those weren't all the magazines I have. I have all of these magazines right here. This is a German horror digest kind of magazine, which is called Gruselkrimi. And I originally found out about these through Grady Hendrix, the horror author. He's also the guy who wrote Paperbacks from Hell. He showed some covers of these on his Facebook page. So he is completely responsible for me going to eBay and ordering a ton of these from Germany. Now these were $1 a piece, so I ordered like 21, I think. But I didn't realize shipping was going to end up coming to an additional like $25. So I wound up spending about $50 on all of these, which, I mean, these are from the 70s, I think. I don't know. I don't read German, so I'm not completely sure. So not a bad deal. The artwork is amazing on these things. I wasn't exactly sure what I was getting into when I ordered these, honestly. I thought maybe these were comics and at least I could enjoy the artwork. But they're not. They're like Reader's Digest for horror, only they're completely in German, so I can't read these. So I am just going to enjoy them for the artwork. And I'm going to switch to my floor cam right now so you can just take in the beautiful artwork on all of these. there's a lot of magazines that I'm not going to be able to read. All right, so here we have Volume 1 of The House of Mystery. This is the omnibus edition that just recently came out from DC Comics. Now, I am a huge horror comic junkie. I love horror comics. Superheroes are fine, but horror is my jam. It's where I go to. So I have been very excited to check out all of DC's horror comics as well as Marvel's. I've not really gotten into these. I have a few of the comics, but they've been pretty rare. But I'm so happy that they're starting to do these big, ginormous omnibus editions now, because you can get a bunch of the comics and read them all at once, and they're presented really nicely. The artwork is beautifully restored. It just looks so beautiful. The colors just really pop. It's super spooky, and I just love it. I love it. Here are 3 of the books that I got in the January Nightworms package. The first one here is Creatures of Want and Ruin by Molly Tanzer. And here we have Stirring the Sheets, which is by Chad Lutzke. And I also have Out Behind the Barn. Those were the last 2 books that I got in the Nightworms package. This next one was on Amazon for like $5, so I had to get it. This is Dead Leaves, 9 Tales from the Witching Season by Keelan Patrick Burke, who is an author I've heard a ton of things about, and I've never read any of his work, and I feel very kind of left out. My man, Adam Caesar. This is Tribesmen by Adam Caesar. Adam is a great guy. He does videos here on YouTube. Definitely go check out his videos. He's really, really cool. He's always talking about horror films, but he pairs those horror films with books that you would like if you enjoyed those horror films, which is really cool. This was originally published a few years ago with a really cool cover. It's right there. Kind of has a VHS look to it. Very Cannibal Holocaust. I really love this new cover. I love the old cover too, but this new cover is really, really nice as well. And then this is another book that went down to like $5 on Amazon. The list price is usually like $14.99. In fact, when I ordered this for $5, the price immediately shot right back up to $14.99. So I'm glad that I got this. It's called Night of the Pumpkin Man. This is by Jack Beaumont, and this is just, you know, a Halloween story about a small town that is being terrorized by a man with a pumpkin head, I believe. So, yeah, definitely up my alley. This is a book that I ordered from Cemetery Dance when they were having a deal at the beginning of last year. It was like buy one, get one 50% off. The one book that I bought was already released, but this next one was a pre-order. So they already sent me the other book, and that was months ago, and I kind of totally forgot about this one until it randomly showed up in my mailbox. And that is On This, The Day of the Pig by Josh Malerman, who you probably know wrote Bird Box. This was limited to how many copies? 1,000 copies. It is signed by Mr. Malerman himself. And then I went to my local Ollie's discount center and I picked up Sleeping Beauties, which is by Stephen King and Owen King. This was $3.99. I try to put off buying Stephen King's books brand new because it's so much better to get it for $3.99 versus $20. So here we have a few spooky middle grade books. I have Literally Disturbed, which is volume 2, More Tales to Keep You Up at Night. And this is basically just a book of poetry, actually. And they're all accompanied by really cool, spooky illustrations. Here we have Snowman, a Harvey Moon adventure. I got this at Ollie's for $2.99. It is a children's graphic novel, which takes place in Sleepy Hollow. This is one that I found at the Dollar Book Swap for $1. I would not have spent more than $1 on this book, trust me. This is called Adventures in Odyssey, a Carnival of Secrets. I bought this book specifically for the cover. I could not pass it up. I kept trying to put it down, and then it would end up back in my cart again. It was like magic. But I mean, just look at this guy's face. Look at this dude. Look at this pervert. What a creep. And look at this bear. This bear is looking at this little girl like, you are completely oblivious to this creep that is staring at you. You need to run, girl. And then there's this fortune teller lady in the background who's observing everything but not doing anything about it. And they're just all forever frozen in time on this terrible cover. I love it. Here we have Monsterland, which is a much better cover, I have to say. This is by James Crowley. I got this at Ollie's for $3.99. It's just a spooky middle grade book. Another one that I got at the Dollar Book Swap is Wait Till Helen Comes, which is by Mary Downing Hahn. This is a classic. I read this back in 6th grade. I haven't read it since, but I would really like to reread it because I hear they're making a movie. So this is a first printing of the paperback edition, and it's in very nice condition. Here we have Danger at the Fair, which is by Peg Carrot. Is it Carrot? I think it's pronounced Carrot. I love this cover. I love it. It's such a cool cover. Alright, so my camera ran out of space, and as soon as that happened, then the battery died. So I'm back. It's like an hour and a half later, so I'm going to finish this book haul up really quick. This one here is called The Vampire State Building, which I thought just sounded really crazy. I like the cover on that. I picked that up. I think it was $1. Here we have 10-Minute Terrors. This is like kind of book I would read as a kid. Never heard of it before, but totally up my alley. This is called Ghosts of Fear Street, number 30. I was a 6th grade zombie. These later Ghosts of Fear Street books are actually pretty hard to find. They have horrible covers. They went from these really nice like hand-drawn covers to these weird like 3D like late 90s video game graphics. It's really weird. I don't know. This is called Frankenstein's 10K by R.R. Knudsen. I'm gonna kind of put this book up close to the camera so you can see. I have no idea what's happening. Like, he's running a 10K, I guess, but his head is like trailing after him. But there's a pumpkin in the background. I don't know if you can see the jack-o'-lantern. Honestly, that's kind of what made me want to buy it. This is really cool. I had no idea this existed. So we have Scary Stories for Sleepovers, a novel. Now, everybody remembers Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That was a classic 3-book series. I'm sure all of you have read it. There was kind of a ripoff that came in the 90s, which was called Scary Stories for Sleepovers. This is like a novel of this series. I did not know they made actual novels. So it's not a short story. This thing is like a full-length children's novel, which, I mean, it's still only like 115 pages, so it's still really short. But yeah, it's just cool. Didn't know this even existed. Alright, so here we have Nightfall. This is a YA, I believe it's a horror story, I think. This was a gift from a friend of mine for Christmas. Here's a mass market science fiction book. I don't really collect a lot of the science fiction pulp books, but whenever I see one that looks extra crazy, I do pick it up, if I can get it for cheap at least. This one's called Hellquad, and it just kind of sounds like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of book. I'll give it a try and see what I think. I'm not like the biggest science fiction fan, but this one does look pretty crazy and pretty fun. Speaking of crazy, this is called Warbots. It is number 7 in the Warbots series. So this one is called Operation Iron Fist. I saw the cover and I was like, okay, well, obviously I have to have that. With a title like Warbots, I had to. This is from Pinnacle. This was published in, let's see, 1989. I am now going to have to find the other books in this series. I also picked up one of the Endless Quest books. These are those Dungeon and Dragons kind of choose-your-own-adventure books. So this is book number 13 called Dragon of Doom. I used to have a lot of these when I was a kid, and I honestly don't know what happened to them. So recently, I posted a video review of Paperback Crush by Gabrielle Moss, and I stated that I would like to read some of the Sweet Valley books just because they sounded insane. So I bought a couple at the Dollar Book Swap. These are the Sweet Valley Twins books, so these are like the middle grade kind of Sweet Valley books. So here we have book number 15 called The Older Boy. And then here we have Jessica on Stage, which is book number 32. And then also at the Dollar Book Swap, I was so excited to find this for $1. It's a first edition hardcover. This is The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery. This is by Gabrielle Zevin. I listened to the audiobook of this like about 2 years ago and absolutely fell in love with it. It's such a good story. So I was glad I was able to find a first edition hardcover because I definitely want to reread this. And last but not least, I found a Folio Society book at the Dollar Book Swap. I found this for $1. This is called Medieval People. It's a Folio Society, and it still has the slipcover, and even the slipcover is in great shape. So I couldn't like not buy this for $1. It's pretty much free. All right, that's the end of this video. I am so tired. My mouth is dry. I'm done. I'm cutting it here. This was way too long. So thank you all for watching this video. Thanks for sticking through to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys had a good time watching this. Thank you again. I'll see you in the next video. Later, creeps.